Picture this. You pour your heart into your work, slaving away for weeks, only for your boss to snatch it, call it shit, and claim it as his own. That's what happened to me. Day after day, he stole my credit, mocked me, and made me feel like I was nothing. But I wasn't going to let him win. By the time I was done, he was screaming in front of the entire office, and I was smiling. Want to know how I got my revenge? Stick around. This one's a wild ride. If you've ever been disrespected, underestimated, or had someone take what's rightfully yours, this story is for you. Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because this is one of the most satisfying revenge stories you'll hear all year. Let's dive in. Imagine stepping into a gleaming downtown law firm. Marble floors that echo with every step. Glass-walled offices that scream power and prestige. The air smells faintly of expensive coffee and leather briefcases. It's the kind of place where dreams are made or crushed. For me, a 26-year-old junior lawyer fresh out of law school, this was my shot. I'd clawed my way through years of late-night studying, crushing student loans, and a relentless drive to prove myself. I was ready to make my mark. But then I met him. My boss, Ethan Caldwell. Picture a guy who looks like he stepped out of a GQ photo shoot. Perfectly tailored bespoke suits that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Shoes so polished you could see a reflection in them. A gold tie pin and matching cufflinks that glinted under the office lights like they were mocking you. Ethan was 29, only 3 years into his career as a litigator, but he carried himself like he owned the place. Everyone assumed he was on the fast track to partner.
Why?
Because he came from money. Old money. The kind that buys you confidence you haven't earned.
Me?
I was nobody's special. First-generation college grad, working-class roots, and a wardrobe of off-the-rack suits that screamed, trying too hard. I was assigned to Ethan for training to learn the ropes of litigation from him. But from day one, I knew something was off. The first time I noticed it, we were in assignment court. For those who don't know, assignment court is the least intimidating part of being a litigator. It's where you show up, say a few words, and set a trial date. It's like the kiddie pool of law.
But Ethan?
His hands were shaking. I saw it. His fingers trembling as he clutched his notes, his voice cracking as he addressed the judge. This guy, who strutted around the office like he was God's gift to law, was terrified of speaking in court. Strike one. Strike two.
He didn't know the law.
At all. I'd hand him meticulously researched memos, and he'd barely glance at them before tossing them aside. His own legal writing was a mess. Clunky sentences, vague arguments, the kind of stuff that would have gotten me laughed out of law school. And strike three? The guy had no spine. He dodged tough cases, pawned them off on juniors like me, and still act like he was doing us a favor. But the worst part? Ethan had a habit of stealing my work. I'd spend hours, sometimes days, crafting legal opinions, poring over case law, double-checking every citation. My blood, sweat, and tears went into those pages. And then Ethan would take them, delete my name from the docket, and pass them off as his own to the partners.
Every
single
time.
I remember the first time it happened. I'd written a 20-page memo on a complex contract dispute. I was proud of it. Every argument was airtight. Every case cited was on point. I handed it to Ethan, expecting feedback, maybe even a grudging good job. Instead, he glanced at it, smirked, and said, "This is shit." My stomach dropped. I felt the heat creeping up my neck, my fists clenching under the desk. Shit. I'd spent 2 weeks on that memo. I checked his instructions later that night, and guess what? It was exactly what he'd asked for. The next day, I saw my memo on a partner's desk. My name was gone. Ethan's name was on it. And just like that, he'd stolen my billable hours I needed to meet the firm's brutal quotas. Without those hours, I looked like I wasn't pulling my weight. The partners started giving me side-eye, whispering about how I wasn't cutting it. I was drowning and Ethan was holding my head underwater. This wasn't a one-time thing. Ethan did it again. And again. Every memo I wrote, every late night I spent in the office, every moment I sacrificed to prove myself. He took it all. He'd saunter into the junior cubicles, his cologne hitting you like a punch before he even opened his mouth. "Redo this," he'd say, tossing my work back like it was garbage. Not what I asked for. But it was always what he asked for. I'd check his emails, his notes, his instructions. I wasn't wrong. He was just a liar. I started to dread going to work. My stomach would twist into knots every morning as I rode the elevator up to the 42nd floor. The sound of Ethan's polished loafers clicking down the hall was enough to make my pulse spike. I'd sit at my desk, staring at my computer, feeling like I was back in middle school, getting pushed around by the popular kid while the teachers looked the other way. I tried to fight back. I went to the partner in charge of our team, a grizzled old lawyer named Richard Hargrove. Richard was old school, think fountain pens and 3 martini lunches. I laid it all out for him. Ethan's stealing my work, deleting my hours, making me look incompetent. I showed him proof, emails, drafts, timestamps. But Richard just leaned back in his leather chair, steepled his fingers, and gave me a patronizing smile. "Boys will be boys," he said. "You'll just have to work harder. Or smarter." I wanted to scream. Work harder? I was already pulling 6-day weeks, 12-hour days, surviving on coffee and adrenaline. My eyes were bloodshot, my apartment was a mess, and I hadn't seen my family in weeks. Work smarter? What did that even mean? I left Richard's office feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. The system was rigged. Ethan was untouchable, and I was just collateral damage. One night, I was alone in the office, the city skyline glittering through the windows. It was past midnight, and I was still there, finishing another memo for Ethan. My fingers ached from typing, my head throbbed from staring at the screen. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling, and something snapped inside me. I wasn't going to let this guy ruin me. I wasn't going to let him steal my career, my dignity, my future. I deserved better. And I was going to make sure he paid for what he'd done. That's when I remembered something. Our firm was cutting edge for the time, with an internal network that was basically a digital gold mine. Emails, memos, drafts, everything was stored on the firm's hard drive. And the security? Laughable. A few months earlier, out of curiosity, I'd figured out how to poke around in the system. I wasn't hacking, not really, just exploring. And what I'd found was a treasure trove of evidence. Ethan's emails to the partners, passing off my work as his. Timestamps showing he'd barely touched the files before claiming credit. It was all there, proof of his lies, that I realized I had 2 choices: keep playing the victim or fight back. And I was done being the victim. Christmas was coming, and I decided to give Ethan a present he'd never forget. My plan was simple but brilliant. Richard, the partner, was old school. He didn't trust emails or computers. He preferred handwritten memos, typed up by his secretary on crisp letterhead. Everyone in the firm knew his style: formal language, precise instructions, always on paper. I'd studied his memos for months, and I knew exactly how to mimic them. I spent days crafting the perfect fake memo. It was a work of art. I used Richard's exact phrasing, his signature font, even his slightly outdated legal jargon. The memo was addressed to Ethan, marked urgent, and it outlined a massive research assignment. The task? A deep dive into admiralty law, think ships, maritime trade, and obscure constitutional questions. It was the kind of assignment that would take weeks, maybe months, to complete properly. The memo stressed that it was critical, needed by January, no exceptions. But here's the kicker: I knew Ethan wouldn't do the work himself. He never did. He'd pawn it off on me, just like always. And that's exactly what I wanted to make the plan airtight. I waited until December 23rd. Richard was leaving for his annual ski trip to Aspen, gone until the new year. There was no way Ethan could double-check the memo with him. The timing was perfect. On December 24th, I slipped into the office before dawn. The place was a ghost town. Everyone was already in holiday mode. I printed the fake memo, placed it on Ethan's desk, and made sure it looked like it had been there all night. Then I waited. Christmas Eve. The office was quiet, the air thick with the smell of pine from a tacky holiday wreath in the lobby. I was in my cubicle, pretending to work, when Ethan strolled in. He looked like $1,000,000 as always, gold watch glinting, suit pressed to perfection. He saw the memo on his desk, skimmed it, and didn't even blink. Just like I'd predicted, he didn't question it. Why would he? It was from Richard, the partner he was desperate to impress. He marched over to my cubicle, memo in hand, and tossed it onto my desk. "This just came in," he said, his voice dripping with fake urgency. "Richard needs it by January. You're on it." I played my part perfectly. "But Ethan, this is huge," I whined, letting my voice crack just enough to sell it. "I'm supposed to be on vacation. Can't someone else handle it? Is it really that urgent?" He smirked, the same smirk that made my blood boil. "No can do. It's a big deal. Just let HR know. Maybe they'll give you time and a half or something." Then he turned and walked away, probably thinking he'd ruined my Christmas. But he had no idea what was coming. Here's the thing. I wasn't worried. Not even a little. You see, back in my third year of law school, I'd written a paper on exactly this topic, admiralty law, its ties to common law, and constitutional division of powers. It was a beast of a paper, 50 pages of dense legal analysis, citing cases going back to the 17th century. I still had it, saved on an old floppy disk in my apartment. All I had to do was dust it off, tweak a few sections, and reformat it as a memo. It took me maybe 3 hours, tops. While everyone else was sipping eggnog and unwrapping presents, I was at home, sipping cheap coffee and laughing to myself as I polished the memo. It was perfect, detailed, authoritative, and completely useless for any real-world case. Just the kind of thing that would make Ethan look like a fool if he tried to present it.
I made sure to cover my tracks.
Over the holidays, I popped into the office a few times, sent a couple of emails, and logged my hours in the system. To anyone watching, it looked like I was slaving away on this massive assignment. I docketed over 100 hours, knowing full well the partners would see it. Every move was calculated. January 3rd. The office was buzzing again. Everyone back from the holidays. I was at my cubicle, pretending to work, when Ethan strutted in. He was dressed to kill. Gold tie pin, cufflinks, the works. He looked like he was auditioning for partner. "Where's that memo?" he barked. "You were supposed to have it on my desk when I got back. I'm going into a meeting at noon." I handed him the memo, still warm from the printer. It was a brick, 80 pages of dense legal text, bound neatly with a cover page bearing my name. He took it, felt its weight, and smiled. "Good," he said, and walked away without another word. I waited. My heart was pounding, but not from fear, from anticipation. I knew what was coming. Just before noon, I heard it. A commotion down the hall. A loud, unmistakable, *FUCK, the sound of a door slamming open. It was Richard, the partner, standing in his office doorway, holding my memo like it was radioactive. His face was red, his voice booming.
"Ethan,
get your ass in here, now." I watched Ethan scramble down the hall, his perfect suit suddenly looking like a costume. "What the fucking fuck is this?" Richard shouted, waving the memo. Ethan mumbled something, but Richard wasn't having it. He ushered Ethan into his office and slammed the door. The shouting was glorious. Even from my cubicle, I could hear Richard tearing into him. 100 hours? 100 hours on this garbage? Are you an idiot? Did you not realize this was a prank? Ethan's voice was a pathetic whimper, trying to explain, but Richard wasn't listening. The door flew open again. "Called in the 90s. Richard bellowed. "Get your ass in here." I walked in, playing innocent. My palms were sweaty, but I kept my face neutral. Richard shoved the memo at me. "Did you write this?" he demanded. I took it, glanced at the pages. "Yeah, I wrote it," I said. "The cover page has been changed to remove my name, but it's mine. I spent all Christmas on it. Is something wrong?" Richard exploded. "Wrong? It's useless. Completely useless. What the hell were you thinking?" I played dumb. "I followed Ethan's instructions to the letter," I said, handing him the fake memo I'd planted. "He gave me this assignment on Christmas Eve. Said it was urgent. I docketed over 100 hours." Richard read the memo, and his face went from red to purple. He turned to Ethan, who was shrinking in his chair. You wasted a junior's time on this? You didn't realize it was a prank? What kind of lawyer are you? He dismissed me, and I hauled us back to my cubicle, barely containing my grin. The shouting continued for another 20 minutes. Word spread through the office like wildfire. By the end of the day, everyone knew Ethan had been played. The partners were furious, not at me, but at him. They couldn't believe he'd fallen for it, that he'd wasted my time, that he'd tried to pass off my work as his own again. Looking back, I still smile when I think about that day. Ethan didn't get fired, but he was on thin ice. The partners started watching him like hawks. Richard told me to send him copies of every memo I wrote for Ethan, which meant no more stolen credit. My billable hours were safe, and I even got a belated Christmas bonus for working through the holidays. Sweet, right? That moment taught me something. Sometimes, the best way to fight a bully is to outsmart them. Ethan thought he could walk all over me because I wasn't on his level. But I showed him and everyone else that I wasn't going down without a fight. Justice? Yeah, it felt pretty damn good. If that story gave you chills, or maybe made you want to cheer, smash that like button and let us know in the comments. What's the most satisfying revenge you've ever pulled off or witnessed? And if you love stories of people getting what they deserve, subscribe and hit that bell icon so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.